The First Reformed Church of Saddlebrook presents to you Christopher's Chat, weekly inspirational messages that get to the heart of the Word of the Lord. And now, here is your host, the Reverend Christopher B. Wolf.
Hi, Pastor Christopher, Christopher's Chat. Good friend David's back, and we want to talk to you today about the connection between sin and our physical health. Psalm 32 is such a great psalm. I recommend that you read it. I'll give you a quick version. Psalm 32 says, "Happy are those whose sin is forgiven." And then he tells a little bit of a testimony. He goes, when I kept my sins hidden, when I kept my sins, when I didn't confess them to God, I didn't feel good. And that's, it's a rough translation, but basically he says, my body was falling apart on the inside. And yes, that may be from thousands of years ago, the psalm, but it's still true today. So many people have health issues that they can't necessarily explain or aren't fixed with some aspirin or some medicine. And it's because the main problem with human nature, the main problem that Jesus came to solve at the cross is sin. Now, it doesn't mean if you sin, you get some disease. But when you think about it, anger, bitterness, fear, anxiety, all of these things affect us physically, and yet they're connected to sin. And so when you start to think about, I want to be more whole, I want to be made well, okay, good. Maybe it is going to a doctor, maybe it is going to talking to the pastor. But the root of it, the heart of it, is separation or disconnect with God. That's what sin does. Sin, sometimes we think sin is just doing bad things. It's much worse than that. Paul talks about sin leads to death. Physically, eternally, all of that. And so we want to get to the heart of it, and we want to say, I want to be connected to God again. Sin separates me from God, but when I confess it, I'm back together with God. So you've heard the phrase, confession is good for the soul? Absolutely. And so we want you to think about that. There's no shame in going to God and saying, I'm sorry. In fact, it's the opposite. It's life-giving when we go to God and we say, I'm sorry. And when we go to other people too and we say, I'm sorry. We break down the wall and we open up to reconciliation with God and others. And David wants to say,
Bless you.
Amen.